You guys know tonight this. Hey, Frank, how are you, buddy? This is the final show of the season. I've decided to go along with that TV series type stuff and do a season of it because I don't know what else to do. And I'm going to talk about that with you too as well. You know, seasons and stuff. But tonight, I got such a fantastic guy, Eric Gorges. If you guys haven't met him, a Craftsman's Legacy. Eric is a metal worker, taught. Well, he got an apprenticeship metalworking. He did all sorts of stuff beforehand. Hey, Ryan, and owns Voodoo Choppers. Does a TV show on PBS called A Craftsman's Legacy, where he goes and interviews different people and does all sorts of stuff. So I got to tell you this: my dream podcast is that I go to different people's workshops and 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 I didn't even think about this, but learn to make something, but we build it together. And I interview them building that one part of it and then go to another workshop and build another part until the end of a season. We've got one thing built that's, you know, everybody's touched. And that, you know, Craftsman Legacy really makes me think about that. So, so I first met Eric at Festool. He is an incredible guy. And so, Eric, my first question always is, you know, what's your origin story? There's a lot of information out there. Let's hear a little bit of, he used to have a beard. Yeah. Somebody said you used to have a beard and maybe they don't recognize you without it. So, sorry, your turn, buddy. Let's go with your origin story. Give us the background.
Yeah, sure. I started Voodoo Choppers in 1999. And the, intent of that was always to handcraft motorcycles and not be limited by other people's constraints and things like that. Just be able to build something and move from there. And we had a lot of success with that. Voodoo was crazy for years and years and years and years. It's grown a lot, and we have motorcycles literally all over the place, like different countries, all over the states. Like a lot of motorcycles, and we did, different television shows with that, and books and movies, and a lot of different avenues. Tons of magazines all over the place. So
I remember seeing it on
it's
TV.
been a blessing,
I remember seeing you guys on TV. I graduated college. I was 26 in '99. I remember when seeing that stuff on Discovery and everything else. How did you get what made you want to start a motorcycle shop though? Like, of everything, you could have done anything. Why motorcycles? Why? Hey, Rob.
I've always loved bikes, ever since I was a little kid. I always loved choppers and motorcycles, and I just thought they were cool as hell, And then I started riding when I was like, I don't know, maybe late teens, like 19-ish, 18-ish, somewhere around there. And then it just sort of went from there. And then I was working on bikes, because I always enjoyed wrenching myself. I wanted to be able to build one.
When did you make your first bike?
Oh, 99-ish. Well, you mean a bike to sell or for myself?
Yeah. Well, no, because you always liked working on bikes, so you couldn't have gone and said, I'm going to start Voodoo Choppers. And it's not like you went in there having never made a motorcycle before.
Yes and no. Like, my early bikes, I was using stuff that you'd buy from a catalog, like buy this fender or buy that fuel tank or whatever, or these controls and stuff like that, right? And not a lot of modifications because I didn't have that skill set really, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until down the road, the first bike that I ever put a rake on for myself, I hired a shop to rake the frame for me. I didn't know how to do it. Yeah. So that all sort of came along later.
Okay, so all right, so you've been pretty open about this. I've seen this before. You had a sort of health crisis. You were in IT, health crisis. You're like, I can't do this. And then you said, I'm going to become a craftsman. I'm going to become a maker.
Yeah, I worked in IT for Xerox Corporation?
I'm in Rochester, New York, so Xerox is a huge place here.
I used to go to Rochester a couple times a year. So
Okay.
I was in, IT. I was at the right place at the right time, dude. I don't have a college degree. I didn't go to college. I barely graduated high school, but I was a computer nerd. I knew Unix very well. And when they were transitioning from an analog to a digital environment, all the front ends were Unix based, and I was there and understood it.
Okay.
So they were like, we don't care anymore if you went to college or not. You're going to do this from now on. And it was awesome. I got to do a lot of amazing things and work with a lot of different clients. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And, but then, yeah, I got sick. I developed an anxiety disorder that was very debilitating and eventually, literally made me agoraphobic where I didn't leave my house,
Yeah.
and I didn't eat, like you see pictures of me back when that happened to me. I weighed 140 pounds. I'm
Wow.
like 4 or 6'5", dude,
Yeah.
so it was a pretty crappy time for me, but I enjoyed working with my hands and making things. And it was my shrink at the time who was like, hey, if you could do anything for a living and you didn't have to worry about money, what would you do? And I said, I'd make stuff. I love making stuff. I love working with my hands. And he said, maybe you should think about that. What would you make? And I answered immediately. I said, I would either build motorcycles or I'd get into fine woodworking, because I grew up around woodworking.
Right.
And but I knew nothing about metalworking at all.
Okay.
And that really intrigued me. Like, woodworking, I grew up around woodworking, you know what I mean? My granddad was a cabinet maker. My dad was, what you call a very serious hobbyist. He had a full shop, and
Yeah.
the whole deal, you know what I mean? So I grew up around that.
So it was the challenge of saying, okay, if I'm going to do something, I want to do something I don't know how to do, but it's still within that whole making idea. It's, you don't know how to do it, but I'm going to do it.
I'm never worried about what I know how to do. You know what I mean? Like, I like to learn. I always have. I don't care if I know how to do it or not. I'll figure it out. I'll ask questions until I find the answers I need. And then I'll spend time getting good at it, and that's what I did. I found a mentor who happened to be like, one of the best metal shapers in the US. And he took me on as an apprentice. And, you know, I never looked back. That was it. Part
I
of the
love
deal was, I got to work as late as I wanted to, and had a key to the shop. So every day after our shift ended, after like regular work ended, I spent hours every day practicing TIG welding until I got proficient at it. And then I've spent hours, learning to use a wheel properly and track metal, So, yeah.
Okay, so you're working for this guy. You're learning. What was he making and selling?
Cars, automotives.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, high end cars. So it was all kinds of stuff. His name was Ron Fornier. And
Okay.
Ron and I became, we became friends pretty fast, honestly.
So you do this, and then you wanted. This is where I'm stuck, and I want to think this through in terms of somebody else who's in this area, not making motorcycles, but thinking to themselves, I want to make this jump. I want to try something I don't know how to do. Right. So you said, I want to make and sell motorcycles.
Yep.
All right. So help me understand the start to this, because that's a pretty big decision.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's a couple things there, right? One is the fact that, my mental state was pretty racked, you know, like when I say I was agoraphobic, I didn't leave my house, dude. Like
Right.
people came to the house. My mom took care of me. She'd come to my house, she'd pick me up, and she'd take me grocery shopping. She'd take me to the doctor's appointments or whatever, you know, and at the time, you know, it was pretty bad. You know, she'd make me eat and stuff like that. So when I took an apprenticeship job, I was still foggy, you know.
Yeah.
I would go there, but I wanted to be able to build motorcycles from scratch. Okay, what are the skill sets you need to be able to build a motorcycle from scratch? You want to be able to learn how to make a fuel tank and fenders. That way you're not restricted by anything, right?
Okay.
If you buy a fuel tank out of a catalog and you modify it, your restrictions are already set for you, right? Like you've bought this fuel tank that is this shape, this style, this length tunnel, yada, yada, yada. And now I'm going to modify that, right? So you're modifying within the boundaries of the shape that already exists.
Okay.
I didn't want that. I wanted to make whatever I wanted to make. So I needed to learn how to shape metal. So I started working with Ron. Now, I you know, went to work for Ron and, you know, swept the floors and learned everything. You know, I was only really allowed to use files for a long period of time because apprentice, you know, didn't really use air tools for a long period of time, you know, because you could do a lot of damage with air tools, especially if you're working in, you know, aluminum all the time, you know.
Yeah.
But you really learn the basics of everything.
All right. So you're learning the skills, and then you're there for a while. I assume that the agoraphobia, you got that under control while you're working there, and then you say, okay. So how did you get the finances, and how did you decide? There's a lot of. It's such a big jump. This is what blows my mind. It's such a big jump to go. I'm going to go from working as an apprentice to opening my own motorcycle shop and building custom bikes, right? So that's what blows my mind. That and the fact that, you know, okay, so I had a piece that I sold one year. I made this beautiful console table out of spalted maple, single leg. I called it the Z leg table. Someone else pointed out to me afterwards it looked like a ironing board, but whatever. It was beautiful. And one of my friends says, you can't sell that for less than $2,300. He says, if you sell that for, and my thing to him, what I said to him is, I would love to do that, but I don't have the clientele. I don't have the people coming to me looking for $2,300 tables. I was really excited. I sold that piece for $1,300, $1,350, and I was really excited about that. So you're starting this motorcycle business from scratch, right? So how did you go ahead getting the clientele that you needed, and how did you build up this business to the point that you were able to get on Discovery? And
There's a lot of different questions there. So
obviously, let's start at the beginning for that,
you know,
right?
Part of it was my hand was forced. So after I started at Ron's place, that maybe 6 months later, they lost a big contract, and he's like, dude, I can't afford to pay you anymore. I got to lay people off. And I said to him, I said, well, I'll tell you what, if I stay and work for free, can I continue learning? And you don't have to pay me anything. And he goes, yeah, for sure. And I said, but I want to keep learning, right? Like, I'll do everything I'm doing now. I just want to keep learning. He was like, absolutely. And I said, if I go out and I sell, he knew I wanted to open up a bike shop. I said, if I go out and I sell custom sheet metal work, will you help me work on that? So it can be part of my learning process, and I can kick back up to you for, you know, the space and the equipment. And he said, dude, if you're going to offer to work for free, he goes, if you sell something, you keep all of it, and I'll still help you with it, and then you'll help me out, and I'm going to keep teaching you. So we did that until they shut down the shop, and then I took a shot and rented a commercial space. I had, I was already doing this type of stuff in my garage, but it wasn't big enough.
Right.
So, I got a commercial space and I got a loan for 20 grand.
Okay.
And went out and bought $20,000 worth of equipment.
Right. So that first year, how was success? How successful were you? How close were you to closing down that first year?
So that was, let's see, first year in the commercial space was 2001. And I remember we had skylights, and I was really, really frugal with like my, natural gas
Uh-huh.
and my electric. So, I keep my shop really cold now because I have for 25 years.
Right.
Like I don't waste a lot of money in overages because I don't need to. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you need to learn to control your overage costs. But how close was I to walking away? I don't know. I never looked back, bro. Over
Okay.
the years, how many times was I close? I had my foot in the, in
Yeah.
bankruptcy. Geez, I don't know how many dozen times, bro. I mean, you name it, I've been there. I was homeless for a while. I had a repo on my ass. I mean, yeah,
Sorry.
dude.
Well, and again, the question comes down to Fearsome Warrior on Instagram said that's the big leap for me, putting the money in on a space alone, right? When you think about taking that big leap, and I know that's one of the things that scares a lot of people, and it's something that I'm looking at doing down the road a couple years, but it's one of those things that you look at and go, this is a scary prospect. If I can't pay this, I'm going to close down, right? And that's, and I'm curious to, you're obviously successful, so you did a lot of things right, and I was just curious how that felt that first year, because I know that there's a lot of people out there who probably are going through that same type of thing.
Dude, I didn't do a lot of things right. It wasn't a right or wrong situation. It was just you make the best decision you can with the information you have and you keep moving forward,
Yeah.
That was the thing. I just was too stupid to really walk away from it, and then eventually I got to a point and I was like, there's nobody that would even bother hiring me. So what the hell am I going to do? Like, I can't go get a regular job. Nobody would really hire me. Right. Like, I just got to keep moving forward with this. And,
All right.
I did.
So
But
obviously,
just to like, I do not want you to think for a minute that, I made every mistake you possibly can make. Way overspent, total debt for a long time. Like, you name it, bro. I've done it, man. Just yeah, that's part of business, man. And you just work your ass off. I'm sorry, you work your butt off.
No, you can say whatever you want. So first of all, hi Vanessa. Secondly, so all right, let's. I want to move on, but I want to ask one last question with this that people out here might be able to get from you. If you could give one tiny piece of information, tiny thing that you've learned, right? You said you went into debt, you did all this stuff. What would be the one suggestion not to do for people starting into business like that?
I
like that.
Be careful. I was with my nephew the other night, and he's just getting into business for himself. And we were talking, he was asking me some questions, and I said, man, I'll tell you what, because he was asking me a lot of these same questions. And I said, bro, I'm going to tell you right now, don't ever be afraid to bet on yourself. Ever, 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 ever. And, and that was the thing, right? Like, when I say I made stupid mistakes, some of them were calculated mistakes, but I was always all in, dude, all in. I put everything on the line multiple times. Like, it wasn't a matter of, well, geez, I hope this works out. Hope isn't a plan, brother.
Yeah.
You make it work out. You work your ass off until it does work out, and you don't give up. That's the attitude you have to have.
So
you know?
Really interesting. I was just reading an article the other day, and the theme of the article was the best predictor for success of somebody is how much they believe in themselves. Like, it's not intelligence, it's not go get.
Oh no.
Right? They've done these studies which show that people who believe that they can will. So you manifested it, brother.
Dude, you don't look at a project and think, I can't do this. You look at a project and think, I don't have all the information, but I'm going to find out and I'm going to get good at it.
Right.
And then I'm going to move forward. Right. And, you know, with the metal shop, everything was like that for years and years and years. You know, it was like, I was just constantly learning. Like, that's just how it was for years, you know, where,
yeah,
you know, it's like, geez, I've only made, you know, a dozen fuel tanks, right? Like, dude, I can't even tell you how many fuel tanks I've made in my life now, right? But like that first year or two, you know, every single one I was learning massively on, right? Like the bell curve was huge, you know what I mean? Like, but you really have to have the ability and the wherewithal. You got to believe in yourself, and you just can't let. You're gonna find you know. I'll tell you something, man. You are never ever gonna be at a loss for finding people that you're wrong and you can't succeed.
Yeah.
Because everybody is more than happy to show you that. Right?
Yeah.
Get rid of that. Don't even think about it. Don't even register it. Just say, okay, thanks for the info. Adios, amigo. And move right on. And I don't care if it's family or not, man. My father told me that. And my dad, he was a great guy, you know. He was a great guy. He was a solid dude. He was a really hard worker. He was a hustler. But he straight up, he was like, no, man, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. You know?
I love that.
But, you know,
yeah.
You can either live life your way or somebody else's way, but you're living life.
I like that. I like that a lot. So Fearsome Warrior, going on this, asked a question over on Instagram. He says, did you build Speculative early on or not at all? The build it and they will come idea, or being the person that builds their idea / dream bike?
No, we didn't do spec bikes. No, all work was commission. You need money to do a spec bike. And dude, you know, like, you're guessing at what people will like. You're waiting to find, you know, they say there's an ass for every seat, right? So you're waiting to find that, right? But, you know, I wanted to do commission work. So we always stayed in that commission area. You know, I built 2 spec bikes in 25 years and you know, hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles. We did 2 spec bikes, and you know, it just wasn't where I wanted to be ever.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. You know, I like building commission stuff because I know that the commission piece is sold versus the piece that I have this crazy idea in my head. I'm going to have 3 more coffee tables sitting in my living room, right? I want to get that out. Right.
Yeah. And it's expensive. A motorcycle, that's expensive, man. You're putting out some bucks at time, you know, before you can sell it, you know.
So my buddy Ryan, who you might have met, said he went to 2 Olympic Games on the backs of people who said he couldn't do it. And I love that, you know, that's cool.
That's awesome, bro. Like, that's you know, it's not an easy road. There's nothing easy about it, dude.
No.
You know? I eat 1 meal a day. I have for years. Not because I wasn't hungry, because that's all I could afford at one time.
Right.
And I got used to it and never went back.
So let's talk about, instead of talking about being broke, I'm going to ignore
it's
that.
hand in hand.
Man, I'm going to be doing that this summer. Let's talk instead. I want to move this into this idea that you said earlier, that you can learn anything. You get to the right people, you can do anything. I love that you said to the car guy. I forgot his name already. Ron.
Ron, yeah.
Yeah, that you said you would work for free to learn from him, because I think that's that shows how much education is and how important it is to you. Now, you've been doing this show, A Craftsman's Legacy, for what, 4 or 5 years now?
Well, so Legacy's out of production now. Our first season aired in maybe 15 or 14.
Okay, so 17.
We did 4 seasons that
Yeah.
were broadcast on PBS. We did 2 seasons that went to YouTube because COVID came in there.
Yeah.
And then it was like, we'll go right to YouTube. And we lost sponsorship. So
yeah, well, that makes it hard. So let's talk about that for a minute, though, because it's a great show. Going back, watching it, the idea behind the show. So for anybody who hasn't seen it, the idea behind the show is that you go to people's shops, different craftsmen, learn from them, you build something there with them, go through and just learn how to do so. How did this come about? How did this idea of this show come about?
I used to, work with a lot of different craftsmen, right? Like I'd work with leather guys and I'd work with mill guys and I'd, work with all kinds of different craftsmen. And I was traveling around on the motorcycle side for many years, dude, and we do like 30 shows a year. So I was meeting people all over the place. They had these television shows on that were just stupid, like, hey, let's see if we can make this in an hour. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't really highlight craftsmanship, I don't think, right? Like, especially the shows that are like challenge based, like, hey, we're going to do this. Somebody's going to be a loser. Somebody's going to be a winner. Well, dude, man, that doesn't highlight craftsmanship. That just is, I don't know. It's just stupid. So I didn't dig it. And I thought it'd be really cool if we did the TV show. If there was a TV show that just highlighted craftsmanship and craftsmen and no gimmick stuff, no, stories and all this nonsense, no
drama,
stupid stuff. Right. Yeah.
It's the reality TV drama. All right. So I love that idea. Yeah. And I know you said it took a couple years to get it up and going.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. Yeah. So I started working on it in like 2010 and we didn't get it on. Our first episode aired in maybe 2014.
So yeah, that's a while. That sounds about right for TV land. I mean, from what I know, not that I've been on TV, but you know what I mean.
I don't know much about it myself.
Well, what was your favorite thing outside of your purview, outside of what you're used to? What was your favorite thing to learn about and do?
It wasn't really like a favorite thing. It was everything. I love learning. I love the ability to work with other people and learn from other people and just talk with other people. I love talking with other people and, discovering about other people's lives and their journey in life. We all have stories. We all have this journey that we've been through,
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent, man. We all have these incredible stories with us, man. And that was the best part of the whole deal, was just like meeting all these amazing people and getting to work with them, getting to see their shops, getting like just a tiny little glimpse of their life. That's what was amazing.
That's got to be like I said, that's my. I have some weird bird outside. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I'm sorry if you can't. There's apparently a bird outside my window, just whistling into my fan.
That's okay.
So, like I said, that's something I would love to do. I want to go around to different shops. I would love to build stuff from them.
Why aren't you doing that then, Logan?
Money, time. I gotta wait. I gotta wait until I'm there. I don't have the time right now. I'm a high school teacher, so I have 6 more years. This is the end of my 24th year. In 6 years,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome, and I think it's wonderful. I knew you were a teacher. I think it's wonderful that you elected to do that with your life, because that's the most important job in the world, dude. Is helping other people and teaching other people, man. That is hands down the most important job in the world. You know?
I so I always tell people teaching was not my plan. It was an accident, and I didn't actually know I liked teaching until I did my student teaching. That when I was there, that's when I was like, "Holy crap, this is amazing! This is what I want to do." So, but I want to come back to the Craftsman's legacy, because there are two questions, two things that I've thought about, and I really want to ask you: are there any of these skills that you learned from one of these particular people that you said, I'm going to take this skill, this is something that I can use in my shop?
Oh, dude, yeah, tons of skills. Like, and it wasn't like necessarily. It's probably not necessarily in the way you're thinking about it, right?
No,
Like
no.
you're asking me, like, did I take up leather tooling after I did it on the show? Is that the intent?
So I have two questions here, and one of them is that, are there any skills or techniques that you think are sort of universal? And it all ties together. Like, you went to these different people and you learned not only just skills of leatherworking, but you learned skills of mind. You learned ways of looking at things, right? So that's
Exactly.
really the question. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing, right? Like, after doing it for a while, there was these commonalities, these common traits that you would see, and we talk about it in the book I wrote, like these different aspects that are traits within every single person we worked with, and those were the things that I had some of those skills, or probably many of those skills, but I developed them more and I enhanced them more. Like, order of operations on any project is so important,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't, in my opinion, when a lot of people get involved with a project, they don't spend enough time in front of the project. I didn't when I was new, like when I first started working with my hands, when I first started hammering metal and stuff like that, I was always, Johnny on the spot, man. I was swinging hammers the first second I could. And I remember Ron used to tell me, he was like, slow down, dude. You don't even know where you're going, you know? And I didn't
Yeah.
understand what the hell he was talking about at the time, obviously. But now, like I am very deliberate in all my actions, and I think things through, and I plan order of operations, and you learn more, you understand more. You're not better, you just know how to fix more problems than
Right.
you do when you're new, right? It's like, and quite frankly, I've slowed down significantly. I spend a lot more time on the details than I ever used to. And all of that type of stuff is directly from the television show.
I love that. Hold on. Well, in a second, Brian, I'm going to ask him that. And my friend Ryan said, you were so right. Years as a production manager taught me exactly that order of operations. So I want to point something out here. This is something that I learned this as an educator. So I used to teach other teachers these certain things. And one of the things that struck me is this. This is my description of it. Okay, you're walking in. You go to your. Let me take a step back. You go to a party. You meet somebody, right? You talk to this person at the party, and you're like, "Hey, you have a great night. You just vibing, just talking. Nothing romance." You leave them. 2 days later, you're walking through your grocery store, and you see that person at your grocery store that you go to every day, and you're like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" "Oh, I live around the corner. I come here all the time." And you realize that you had to have seen this person every day for the past 5 years, but they didn't have a face, right? So there was no recognition of that person. So what you're talking about, what I think is really neat here, is you went to these people and then you wrote about it in the book. You wrote about the things that stood out to you because they were things that you knew, but didn't recognize. And once you're
Yeah.
able to put a face to it and a name to it, putting that name to something really allows you to recognize it and then pay more attention to it. So, right, that's where you are, and that's I think age. Sorry.
Oh yeah, 1,000%, bro. Like 1,000%. You know, I'm 54, and you know that a lot of this stuff is just
Yeah,
because you do it for a while, you know, man, and you like you figure things out, you know, and you get kicked so many times,
yeah.
you're just like, all right, dude, yeah, kick me again, man. I'll
I
still
know.
be here,
I know
you
what
know.
to do.
Yeah, I
Um,
ain't worried about it, you
so
know.
my friend Brian said, "What is one thing you want to try or learn more about?"
Oh, well, I can tell you that I will eventually get into uh, ceramics, and I'll definitely build out a forge.
You know, it's funny when I talked to Jimmy October last year, and I said to him, "You are famously,
Duressa?
yeah."
Yeah.
And I said, "You are famously good at everything you do." I said, "What's one thing that you don't do well or that you have problems with?" He said, "Pottery. Pottery is one of the hardest things to do."
Pottery is very difficult. Yeah. But, you know, I really fell in love with it. You know, I had the ability to work with um, a gentleman in upstate New York that we did an episode on, you know, and it was right after my mom had passed.
Huh.
So I had that in my head, you know,
Yeah.
and then like literally, like, you know, I was at mom's funeral, and then, you know, 2 days later, I was in upstate New York filming. So
Oh
I
my God.
still had all this crap in my head, you know, and David, he knew that my mom had passed, and I don't know, man. You know, same with, you know, just working with my hands, building motorcycles and metal shaping and stuff when I was dealing with the anxiety disorders, and that, you know, that cathartic value in working with my hands helped me again with processing the death of my mom. You know, I was really close with my mom, and they set me up when I was done shooting for the day, you know, like Audie would come and pull my mic, and then David would set me. David was a gentleman we worked with. He would set me up off camera, out of frame, on a wheel, and just let me have fun. I made like, I don't know, 7 or 8 bowls and stuff. He fired them all for me after we left.
That's cool.
Yeah, but
Well,
it's very difficult.
I mean, like you said, it's all about the relationships and learning new things and using that to evaluate yourself and move forward. I think in everything I build, you know, you talked about this earlier. You make mistakes, and part of becoming better is learning how to move on from the mistakes, move past those, or fix them. And I think that making makes me not only learn how to do things better, but also think about myself and my past, whatever. It's therapy, right?
Oh yeah, you know that ability to get lost in time,
Yeah,
right? Like I joke with people all the time because there's a lot of times I'm not sure exactly what day of the week it is, or, you know, time of day or whatever. But, you know, it's just not an important factor for me a lot of
yeah,
times. And I am a, you know, if I'm into something and I'm working and I can get lost in that time, and you just enter that space where that's what you're focused on right now. Like
yeah,
that's a gift to be able to find that space in your
yeah,
mind, you know what I mean? And just really concentrate on doing something that's in front of you, and trying to become better at it,
yeah.
you know.
I like that. Well, Now I'm going to switch tack here, switch where we're going for a little bit. Talking about becoming better and becoming better at it. You are, for people who don't know, you're engaged to a very, very lovely, wonderful woman. And we were talking before the show that you guys are going to now set up a shop together. You're going to move in together. And this, one of those things that I like to talk about, again, lessons type thing to give to people. You're going to work with this person and you're going to have to set up a space where you're sharing space. And you've been in hundreds of workshops, right? So as you go in and you think about setting up the space, what are some things you want to think about in terms of going in there?
Like, so how would I set up the space for two
my
people?
overarching thought here is, again, we've got people on here who maybe are getting ready to move themselves and they're going to set up a shop, right? We've got people on here who are thinking, I need to rearrange, something's not right here, right? So as you're thinking about setting up your shop, what are a couple of the things that you're thinking about? I need to want to set up maybe electric, maybe you want to think about where you're putting your benches.
I see what you're saying. So, honestly, first and foremost, I'll talk with Jen and find out what she needs, what she wants. I'll set up around her. I'm totally fine with that. Give her what she needs. Have a beautiful space, beautiful shop, and then I'll just set up around there, man. But yeah, it's I've been able to set up like I think 5 different shops for myself over the years, commercial spaces, So, I sort of know what I need. You know what I mean? Like, and you're spot on. Like, electrical is one of the first things, right? Like, we got to get juice in there. We got to get all the wiring, all the drops in there. We're going to be switching from a 3-phase environment to a single-phase environment. So I've got to flip some equipment and, get rid of some of our heavier equipment and buy some smaller stuff because I don't need the big stuff anymore. And then get heating set up and then security and cameras and all that crap set up. And then it's just a matter of placing equipment, So one of the things I do is I look at like, again, sort of order of operation. So for me, for what I'm doing, like framework is going to be done close to metal shaping.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I've got framework, fabrication, and then metal shaping. All those are going to be, within vicinity in a line of each other because they all use the welder, they all use the torches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I want to have all that equipment there. You know what I mean?
And then stuff is in the same area.
Yeah. Sort of break down things from there.
Okay.
We always set up a dirt room. So a dirt room is where I'll keep my bandsaw. I'll keep my grinders in there, my stone grinders, my paper grinders, face grinders, all that stuff is in one room. Sandblaster, it's all in the same room. And it just keeps all the junk, quarantined into one space.
So, nothing to do with anything. What's your favorite tool to use? Just out of curiosity.
I've always enjoyed using a wheel because there's an elegance to it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a sophisticated machine. It's not a fast machine by any means. It's not really complicated to use. It takes a little bit of time to learn how to track on it, but there's a pleasant aspect of using it that is for me really satisfying. So that's definitely one of my favorite machines to use. Plus, it's not a loud machine. I've lost a significant amount of my hearing over the years now. So I appreciate when a machine just has a nice, nice swoosh to it, and it's just peaceful. And then probably after that, dude, it's torches and welding. You know,
I've never
I
welded.
love flame welding. Love. Oh, you haven't? No.
Never.
We can fix that. That's not a problem.
I want to. I really want to. So I have a friend on here, Brian. He keeps offering to teach me lathe work. I've never done a lathe. I think I did welding like once. Heck, the one time I took my daughter to maker camp, she did more welding than I did. You know, it was more important to me that she got to experience it. You know,
Absolutely, yeah.
and she loved it. She had a great time with it, but it was not her thing. But she enjoyed it. It's one of those things. It's definitely something I want to learn how to do because at some point I want to be able to make metal bases myself for tables and coffee tables. You know, and that's something I just want to be able to say I can do this. So it's like everything else.
Well, it's a you know, a good skill to have, and you know, honestly, man, if I was to if somebody asked me about it, I would tell them to really spend time with torch work and understanding how to use a torch properly. If you spend time using oxyacetylene, you can learn, you know, to control heat, cut, weld, the whole deal. And really, at the end of the day, a big part of welding is heat control. Like you have the whole metallurgical side of it, right? Like
Yeah.
what's happening structurally to the metal as I'm heating it up, and you know the molecular structure of the metal's changing because of the heat cycling and everything else, right? And what's happening to the carbon in that process, and there's all that crap that's you know super scientific and just it's interesting, but it's weird. But the fun shit is like having flames, right?
Yeah.
Open flames out, or you know, you're laying down, you know, a weld with a TIG welder, and that's just a lot of fun, you know. And but being able to control heat is so important, you know.
Well, Alabama Papa Chad told me he'd get me welding, and my buddy Brian said he'll get me doing lathe work at Maker Camp. That's what I want to do. And you guys are going to be at Maker Camp, right?
Yeah, Jen and I will be there together. Yeah,
It'll be your
yep,
first
yep.
public outing as a married couple. You're not. I heard that Papa Chad might be doing something with the wedding. Is that right? Do I
Yeah,
remember that?
Chad's our preacher, man. Chad's our preacher.
Well, you couldn't find anybody short, or you were trying to find someone the same height as you.
No, you know what? I met Chad years ago at a workbench in
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta there, you know, and we've met a couple of years in a row, you know, and talk and whatnot. And I've always enjoyed him, you know, he's just a great guy.
Yes.
He's really nice. And Jen loves him, you know, and we were at Maker Camp last year, and Jenny and I had already been talking about getting married and whatnot. And it was both at the same time. We were sort of like, hey, how do you feel about having Chad marry us? You know, and both of us were just at that same space. And at that time, we didn't really know what we were going to do. You know, we were talking about just like going out to Wyoming or something and getting married out there, or maybe even like some kind of beach wedding or some stuff like that. But, and I was like, yeah, I would just like have Chad fly out. You know, I don't think he'll really care. So I talked to him at Maker Camp last year. I was like, hey, you know, this is going down. How do you feel about it? And Chad was like, hell yeah, man. Hey, dude, we were back from Maker Camp like a week, and Chad hit me up. He's like, all right, I'm ordained. You know, I was like, all right, bro. So, yeah, we're super stoked for it. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Actually, my buddy Ryan just had a good point. Either we have a big reception at Maker Camp, or you guys just renew your vows immediately afterward at Maker Camp. We could
We could do that. Yeah.
We could build like this massive wedding venue.
You know, it's a hard thing, dude, because it's like, you know, obviously we have, you know, a lot of friends and we know a lot of different people and stuff like that. And you want to be able to just like invite everybody, you know, and it's like,
You
I don't
can't.
know. It's really difficult, dude. I don't dig that part of it at all. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, if you invite this cat, then I gotta invite these 20 other people, you know, and it's crazy, you know, but whatever, man, you know, you just do the best you can with it, and hopefully everybody understands, you know.
I mean, listen, it's your wedding. That's what's important. Nobody, we'll all see you at Maker Camp. We're all excited, and it's just, it's exciting. It really is. And I
I'm
don't know.
excited for Maker Camp. Well, I'm excited to get married too, but I mean, I'm excited for Maker Camp. It's gonna be fun.
It's okay. You can be more excited for Maker Camp. We all understand.
Oh, I had a ball last year. I
Yeah.
was teaching, you know, some metal shaping demonstrations. So I had a lot of fun with it. You know?
I wanted to come down and see it. I was busy in the restoration station. So what were you teaching with the metal shaping? What were you doing down there?
Literally just the basics. So like, you know, all of metal shaping involves stretching metal and shrinking metal, right? So you're stretching metal by striking it, right? And you're shrinking metal by other means. There's other ways of shrinking metal. So I was just demonstrating that. So, you know, and it's a yin yang relationship, right? So if you strike metal, it's going to stretch in one place, it's going to shrink in another place. But on top of that, then you can also do mechanical shrinking and different forms of shrinking. But I was just teaching like the very basics of it. And it's where you start out when you don't
Right.
know how to shape metal. It's where you start out, you know?
Well, it's fun. I mean, you've been involved in a lot of that with the shaping. I saw that you were doing stuff with Cutsall as well, right?
Yeah, I've been working with Cutsall and Forom. So I've worked with Forom for a couple of years now, and I'm just a huge fan of their tools, their line. You know what I mean? And I'm the first to admit, dude, I live a very blessed life, man. I I really only work with companies who I really truly believe in their product. I've used their product for a long time. I've made money with their product for a long time. And then I'll develop a relationship with them outside and see if there's
Yeah.
anything I could do to help bring more awareness. You know, and that's what it was with Fordham and Cutsall for that matter. You know, Cutsall is a Michigan company too. I've been out to their shop a bunch of times. The owners are fantastic. There's so much history. That company was founded in like the 50s, dude.
Oh wow.
People don't people they don't realize the history behind it. They're the ones that really developed that technology, that carbide, you know, fusing the carbide to a metal mandrel. That they're the ones that sort of developed that whole
Oh wow.
technology.
And that's
Yeah, they're just great people, you know. So that's been an awesome thing. So I've been traveling a lot doing power shaping, or not
right.
power shaping, power carving
Okay.
classes
Yeah,
in wood, and
that's
I
cool.
enjoy doing that.
Well, I mean, it's a lot like metal shaping. It's just a lot less pounding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's similarities to it. You know, it's like, I don't know, almost a little sculpturing. You
Yeah.
know, you're removing material. You know what I mean?
Well, let's go with that. Let's as you get into this point where now you've slowed down. You're not as uh, apt to hit before you think. Right? Where do you see your workshop going? Where do you see your work going from here on out? What do you see in the next couple of years?
I don't know. Part of it, to me, that's really exciting, right? Like I'm super open. Uh, I have a full wood shop, like a full wood shop. I have a full metal shop. We have a lot of capabilities, and now I'm just going to have all that on my own property, or our own property.
Right?
And you know, I'll probably continue doing maybe one bike build a year, and see what else I can get involved with, dude. I've been doing a little bit more sculptural work lately, and like I just did that boot commission for the
Right.
Woodruff Foundation, and that type of stuff, which I really enjoy doing. I've taken on a couple woodworking commissions, but I'm really careful about that. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work. There's a lot to do there. My buddy Ryan just reminded me. So we've only got a couple minutes on Instagram. I always have to make the warning because Instagram has been known to cut me off at an hour.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I just want to put that out there for everybody on Instagram. If we do get cut off, there's no show. I'm taking off in July. I'm going to come back sometime in August. I've got a couple people already lined up that I'm really excited to talk about or talk to. And you know what? I got to think about if you guys have anything, if you enjoy listening to these, drop me a comment, go to the YouTube and say something because this is kind of hard for me. Like this is outside of my wheelhouse and interviewing people, talking to people. And it's one of those things that you look at and you go, am I accomplishing anything? I love talking to people. Like I learned so much about you tonight besides the fact that Chad is marrying you because I already knew that. We talked afterwards. He's like, dude, don't tell anybody, but I didn't want to throw him under the bus, but he was really excited. He was so excited when you said that. So,
that's awesome. We're really super excited to have him.
So, as we're getting to the end of our time, it is important here because you talked about the boots. You talked about and one of the things I like is you're doing the it's like an octopus sculpture.
Yeah.
So what motivates you? Where do you get the creative spark? Like, what do you look at? And you're like, I want to do this.
Well, it depends. Like the boot case, the boot display case, they reached out to me. They had Bob Woodruff's boots, and they wanted to have a display for them.
Right.
And originally it was glass and wood, and I had done some rough sketches of it, and then I met with them in person, not Bob, but his brother Dave, who founded the company, and he talked to me and told me the whole story behind Bob and everything, and what happened, and I said, man, I know we've already got a design that we've talked about and approved, but would you give me like a couple of weeks? I have another idea, like to flesh out a little bit, and I think it'll be more fitting. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. So, just at a time and having a better understanding of the situation gave me a totally different perspective on it, and I'm really grateful that they allowed me to spend time developing that a little bit more and going, and seeing where that could go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think it looks a lot better than it would have.
So it's the interpersonal, the interactions you had with them that really allowed you to sort of get a little bit more information and get a little bit more creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even when I'm building a motorcycle for somebody, like say we meet up and you want to have a motorcycle built, like we talk about what you like, and we talk a lot about what you don't like, because what you don't like is way more important to me than what you do like.
Right, right.
What you can't live with, that I really need to know.
Right.
But yeah, then you just sort of go from there.
Okay. It's funny on a completely sort of sidestepping thing. A lot of times, you know how it is. People say, "Where should I buy my tool? Or what tool should I buy?" Like looking for things. And one of the things I always tell new woodworkers is to buy your tool from Harbor Freight, your first one that you're going to buy. Use it, and then figure out what you want and what you don't want, and buy a good one, right? Then you go and you invest in the good tool. That way you have experience with it. And that's sort of the idea of going, all right, how am I going to use this? What things am I, Jenny said she doesn't like being cold, so she'd like to live with a hot tub. So now you know what she doesn't like and what she wants. You got something to build there, buddy. Copper. I want to see a copper hot tub with the piping going around to heat it.
We've talked about it. There was a gentleman I worked with who had an outdoor hot tub that was literally like a gigantic kettle, and it was, wood heated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, that is pretty cool. And I had the capabilities of building that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
that'd be amazing. All right.
But
well, I want to thank you for coming on. If you had one thing to end on, one last thing to say to somebody listening, besides that you love Jenny.
Really, I don't know. Don't be so serious. Don't give up. Believe in yourself,
Don't give up.
Believing in yourself is so important, dude. It is so important. There's going to be a million people that tell you can't do something. You gotta, what you know what you can do, what you can't do, and you just keep pushing yourself forward. That's the biggest thing.
I love that.
Don't let somebody else tell you what you can do and what you can't do, man. They don't know.
I always tell my students, one of the things I hate is, and I told my kids this many times, I said, the problem with quitting is that it becomes really easy to say, well, I couldn't do it last time and I quit. So it doesn't matter, I can quit again, right? It becomes a habit. It's really easy to go, I can't do it, so I'm going to quit.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
It definitely does. And I don't know, man. Failure, you're better off failing than you are quitting. You know what I mean? Failure, you're going to learn from. Quitting, you don't really learn from. And it really is not a good feeling for people. And incite shame, and shame is destructive, and it's just not a good deal. You're way better off failing.
If there wasn't already a podcast called it, I would have called this "Failure is an Option."
Yeah,
that's what I would have called it. So, all right. I thank you, Instagram. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you again in August, unless I see you before then. I'm going to end the video there. You guys have a great night. And now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to end the video here. I'm always terrible at ends. I'm like, all right.